What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Wall. My name is Bogz. Today, I'm going to be reviewing episode 5 of Ahsoka. This one's called Shadow Warrior, and we're going to do a straight spoiler review. So I'm kind of a little shocked, especially after the ending of episode 4. Filoni kind of has shook up and woke up the fan base. I was actually excited to view and see what will unfold. It gives you the impression that something crazy is going to happen. And that's what we got, really. There was so much kind of mystery with how the last episode ended off. Would they be able to pull this all off? Obviously, we've got Hayden, Christensen, Anakin, we've got Ahsoka, we've got the world between worlds, and can Filoni do it? Can he pull it off? A lot of questions how this would all come together. And overall, the episode did give me a sense of wonder, which is what I demand from my Star Wars content. It did things that I would never kind of expect to see in live action. Basically, it met expectations, exceeded them potentially. So it's things that I really wanted to them to do, particularly in the Disney era and in live action. They haven't done this kind of thing, but Filoni kind of is proving himself to be the savior of Star Wars, and basically he nailed it. This is kind of the direction that I want Star Wars to go in, building the mythology, moving the story forward, and showing the love of what has come before of George Lucas's Star Wars. And he had everything in this, whether if it's the prequels, whether it's Clone Wars, whether it's Rebels, whether it's this current story moving forward. Yes, I definitely had nitpicks, which I'll come to in a second. But overall, like I said, I did have the sense of wonder which Star Wars is supposed to give you. The hero's journey, the mythology, ancient religions, master and apprentice storylines. I did get all of that. Let's get straight to some of my likes and dislikes. I thought it was actually very bold, and I was questioning what and how they would be able to do some of the things that I theoried, some of the kind of thoughts and theories that are generally online, but they went for it. They definitely went for it with Anakin, obviously giving Ahsoka the lesson and finishing off her training. Anakin and Ahsoka, for me, felt like they had the depth there and the history, particularly Hayden Christensen's performance. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I also thought he looked great. You know, whether it's the Clone Wars look, which I was like shouting at my screen, like, you look fantastic, Hayden. So obviously in the Clone Wars gear with the haircut and everything, and obviously in the kind of Revenge of the Sith look, obviously we did see some of that in episode 4, but going into that further, and his fighting style is beautiful. Like his technique, he's the best kind of live action lightsaber user that's been in live action, quite frankly. And although it doesn't reach the peak, and talking about the lightsaber duels, as the prequels, but it is close. This is kind of the next best stuff. It is missing that top level A star. I believe his name is Nick Gillard, the stunt coordinator, but I believe is missing his input, but it was pretty good. And yeah, what they did definitely for me built into the Lucas mythology, the mystery, as I said, the hero's journey, blended in all throughout this episode and kind of in the bracket of a master and apprentice story. For example, just the moment where Anakin uses his red lightsaber and kind of strikes Ahsoka and Ahsoka defends it. Obviously, you have a cross symbol there, the red and the blue. Obviously, the red is kind of Anakin and the dark side user. And obviously, the blue is Ahsoka. You see where Ahsoka's looking, the shot is kind of over Anakin's shoulder. The symbolism of Christian mythology, of obviously the Christ figure, you know, Anakin with the hair kind of looks like Christian depiction of the Messiah. Ahsoka's looking directly at him and needs to make a choice here. So I got all the symbolism there. And that's something that, like I said, is definitely the mythology that I really like. And, you know, that might not get spotted or appreciated by maybe casuals watching. That kind of storytelling does appeal to me. Now, Anakin's lesson, particularly on the first viewing, I didn't particularly get everything at first. The more I've seen it, the more I like it and I understand it. However, watching it even now, I do kind of wish he gave a bit of a different lesson, ideally. But what I did get, I did enjoy the more I watched it. It has come together more, and I do understand exactly what they're telling. But did kind of wish he gave something a bit more grander in terms of a lesson, potentially a bit more direct. But it does go in line with the previous episode storyline. She needs to fight to survive. You know, she's about to go off to another galaxy to fight off all the Force users and Thrawn, etc. and who knows what else is there and who, she'll come up against. So she needs the fight, the eye of the tiger. So she's now able to confront her enemies and act like a Jedi, basically. But the lesson did make you ponder, particularly going into the Clone Wars era, the flashback, particularly the battle that they had together. I believe it's on Ryloth because there's a lot of Twi'leks there. From what I remember, there is an episode in the Clone Wars where they have a battle on Ryloth. So I believe it's like a season 1 or an early episode of the Clone Wars, which that battle took place. And that's what resonates with me and others, grasping morality and your destiny, taking the steps. I mean, these are the lessons that Luke had, taking steps where you might not know the outcome, where, in order to save your friends, you need to do the greater good. As I said, morality, good versus evil, the ethics, is the magic of Star Wars. And I got all of that in this episode. Not only did they do that lesson within this story, they also moved the story forward. It's very bold. I'm here to finish your training, talking her through the memories, crazy and bold. Credit to Filoni. I don't think anyone else could have pulled this off. And of course, it won't please everybody. Like I said, the lesson wasn't the most direct I've ever heard in Star Wars. There will be accusations of nostalgia bait, fan service. This is like a video game mission almost. I'm just pleased to see Anakin back. And you cannot tell Ahsoka story without Anakin. So it didn't feel like an Anakin story. It felt like a Ahsoka story, which he is a necessary requirement. And people who haven't seen Clone Wars, haven't seen Rebels, won't understand the relationship, won't get the depth of the storytelling being portrayed. And it's a risk. That's why I like it as well. It's a risk because you may upset the fans, you may turn people off, you may not like, who don't like the prequels, who never liked Anakin Skywalker, or like I said, think it is nostalgia bait. They might not like it. And it is a risk upsetting the fans to do bold storytelling. For example, I think Vader in particular, seen in, let's say, Rogue One, is textbook fan service. Yes, it was a fantastic scene to see him at full flow, but it doesn't add anything to Anakin's story. It doesn't add anything to his character. It was a cool moment and it totally made sense that he'd be there. And in that time and in that kind of moment, almost the beginning of the rebellion and things and the fear factor that we see in the original trilogy. But with Anakin in this, we got the character development of the good versus evil half of him and the closure regarding the master and apprentice relationship that he has with Ahsoka, because it was left, very one-sided at the end of, let's say, Star Wars Rebels when they last had an interaction. So now it's kind of coming together. She's got the lesson. She finished her training in effect. She's now at peace, and now she's, which I'll come to in a second, Ahsoka the White, seemingly obviously like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Previously, in the previous episode, she was Ahsoka the Grey, and that was some of the criticism I had in some of the previous episodes. She didn't seem like herself. Like, she didn't seem as charming, as funny, always positive, just a bubbly, fun character. She definitely seemed moody, a bit unlikable, really. But now that she's had the lesson, obviously post the lesson for the rest of this episode, she was joking, at the end with the Purgle and Hu Yang and on the ship, and bonding moments that she had with Jason, with Hera, with Hu Yang, hugging Jason. And when she comes out of the world between worlds 2 back to the planet that they're on, that baptism she has, through, again, very, mythology based, almost a baptism. Now she's like a new born again Jedi. And some of the Master and Apprentice stuff was basically unspoken, from the looks, from, like I said, the history that we all know previously, from example, particularly the Clone Wars and obviously Rebels. There was lore behind it, their actions, and I would love to know the direction that Filoni gave and his kind of discussions, or just even a general interview about this episode. Sorry, with Rosario Dawson, with Hayden Christensen, about why they give certain looks, about why they do and don't do certain things, the fighting styles, particularly the ending with Anakin and the Sith eyes and how he can change and things like that. I would love to know the lore behind that, because it's all there, but I want to know his explanation as to why and how it occurred and the direction that he gave the actors. And it was wonderful to see Hayden Christensen back. Plays the role so good, and he was just making me smile the whole time. His dialogue, particularly his action scenes. Like, he's still got the technique. He's still brilliant with a lightsaber. He's switching from good to evil, from master to giving the advice, to then dark side, then to the kind of Vader. Fascinating direction. But the main points were that it was bold, it had depth, definitely had fan service, which I loved. Some of the best Star Wars in live action. I watched it straight back again the second time. As soon as it finished, I watched it again. And some of the best mythology storytelling in Star Wars in live action that I've seen. It did feel and has reminiscence of a Clone Wars or Rebels episode because it hits the notes and leaves you with questions whilst pushing the story forward, whilst honoring the legacy from the past, particularly George Lucas's legacy, the connection between Anakin and Ahsoka. And of course, if you didn't see Clone Wars or Rebels, then you may not understand the significance of the master and apprentice relationship and that in these moments. And even with Anakin explaining the legacy that she belongs to, always references Obi-Wan as, him being a part of a master and apprentice, and obviously Obi-Wan's master, which was Qui-Gon Jinn, Qui-Gon Jinn's master, which was Count Dooku, Count Dooku's master, which is Grandmaster Yoda, of course. So she belongs to a legacy, kind of last surviving Jedi of the Jedi Order, not including Luke, because he was never obviously a part of the Jedi Order, but you know what I mean. So tying all this in, like I said, respecting George Lucas's vision of master and apprentice, and like I said, coming down and roundabout, the prequels, original trilogy, Clone Wars, etc. So tying all this in, I thought was really good work. As I said, and she's now Ahsoka the White, going off to a new galaxy with new adventures, and she needed that positive affirmation because she now also has her own apprentice, and she needed her master to kind of shake her up. And shout out to the girl that played the young Ahsoka. I thought she was absolutely fantastic, particularly the action scene in the second flashback setting, which was the Siege of Mandalore, as you mentioned, which we got kind of what happened to the events after that. So this was just before she fought Darth Maul, and around the time obviously Anakin and Obi-Wan was fighting Count Dooku and Revenge of the Sith. So I thought we were going to get a Darth Maul appearance there for a second. I will say that the girl who she seemed the right age for the first Clone Wars flashback, the second Clone Wars flashback, she did seem a little young because we did see the animated version of that. She is obviously older, roughly. I'm not sure, she's about 18 or so. I think they tried to make her look older or taller or whatever, but she did kind of look the same, and that's definitely Ahsoka does not look the same in animation. So it's a nitpick, but would have liked to see her look a little older in the second flashback. And as I said, even the way the episode's put together, this episode is about Ahsoka. And I've been saying it, the story so far that we've seen is not about Ahsoka. It's about Sabine and the map and trying to get Thrawn. It's not, hasn't been Ahsoka's story. I want her story to be front and center. And I got that this episode. Coming out of the lesson, obviously she's now Ahsoka the White, connecting with Jason and obviously Hera, and making a plan to go get Sabine, and obviously the Purgle, the force connection with them. Obviously, that's something that we do see in Rebels. Ezra was particularly strong at connecting with animals. That's something that she discussed that with him as well as one of his kind of special abilities, if you will. And yes, obviously, some people that, like I said, don't like the Purgle. Obviously, they did travel to hyperspace by the end of the episode. They do that in Rebels as well. See the mechanics of it, they're revving up. It is like a starship as well. So, but we've seen that before in Rebels. See even live action, finally, the Purgle, because they've been teased quite a lot. So again, the legacy has been respected in terms of the Anakin and Ahsoka story. It has to include Anakin, and obviously the story has been moved forward. And now Ahsoka's been on an arc. Her attitude has changed, is totally different. She's smiling, happy, joking by the end of the episode, and way more like the Ahsoka we all know and love. So moving forward, I do think it will slow down a little bit because they do need to catch up with obviously Sabine and Balin and stuff, and Morgan Elsbeth, but obviously still no appearance from Ezra or Grand Admiral Thrawn. Obviously, he's been deemed as the big bad of the Filoniverse, and he's been put kind of front and center in the marketing with Lars Mikkelsen and stuff. We've still not seen him. There's only 3 episodes left, and still no Ezra. Them guys are on the hunt for Ezra. The other lot are on the hunt for Thrawn, and we've still not seen them. Ezra is an integral part, obviously, of Rebels as well. And where is he? Will he be kind of with Thrawn? Is he still a Jedi? There's a lot of questions there. And was that actually Anakin? On top of that, there was no explanation of how Ahsoka was there. Even at times, it did get me confused about, is this the world between worlds? I actually believe it is. But the way it looks, particularly with no portals to kind of jump in and out of, to see moments throughout the Star Wars universe. Like, that was the main point of the War Between Worlds in Rebels. There was no pause, just kind of pathways and walkways, which are a different color here. You know, they're all blue, and obviously in Rebels they're kind of white. White and black anyway. I do believe it's in the War Between Worlds, but it did leave me pondering, you know, how did she get there? Who pulled her through? Or did she get pulled through a portal? How is Anakin there? Is that the real Anakin? I believe it is. But is it really? Is it something to do with the Mortis? Because like I said, there was a lot of religious mythology symbolism here. Did that have anything to do with it? Obviously, we know the whole Mortis arc from the Clone Wars. Father, the son, and the daughter. You know, obviously very similar to the Trinity as well, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So that had a lasting effect on Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. Did that have anything to do with it? I'm really hoping it does, because that will kind of, that's the only way you're going to top the War Between Worlds, really. So lots to like about this episode. It wasn't perfect, obviously, some issues here and there, but overall, loads of good stuff. What do you guys think of this episode? So not the most kind of straightforward or generic review here, just some of the things that I like, because it was a mythology heavy episode, and the return of Hayden Christensen, who is Star Wars at this point, and I'm glad he's getting a chance to go again, because I think he's still got it as Anakin. So different to his appearance in the Obi-Wan series as well. And I was kind of hoping for an Obi-Wan flashback as well, some of the Clone War stuff, and I'm hoping we do see Anakin again in this series. Yeah, 3 episodes left. What have we got? Will it be a Force Ghost? Will it be the War Between Worlds again? Will it be other characters appearing? Will he have any interaction with Luke at all? A lot of questions up in the air, but at least we got some answers in terms of the mythology. And like I said, they moved the story forward. But that has been my review. Nice to be excited about Star Wars series again. I can't wait for the next episode and to review it. I've been Bogz. You guys have been watching Off the Wall, and we'll catch you guys on the next review.